Welcome to the best there ever was, the pro wrestling podcast. Where we talk about the art form that is pro wrestling and the emotional connection keeps us coming back. As always, I'm Chris.
I'm Fax.
We are the Curtain Jerks, and this is week 3 of our deep dive and just weekly talking about watching New Japan. Still seeing where this is going. We'll have some chats after the World Tag League and Best of Super Juniors are over and see where we're going. But it was a fun week.
It was another fun week of Super Juniors and World Tag League.
Yeah, we finally got to the big final show. We got some live English commentary, so we got to have that when we woke up fresh on Sunday morning, or in my case, not so fresh at like 7 in the morning with a 2.5-year-old. But I had it, and Kevin Kelly could just sort of talk me into the day the way I enjoy waking up. I enjoy waking up with Kevin Kelly.
His dulcet tones.
His dulcet tones.
I will admit, I had actually forgotten that they were doing live commentary for that because, I knew that I did remember they were going to do it for the actual finals. I didn't remember that it was for the last night. I didn't remember that, and I also didn't remember that we were getting a 6-man match with guys not in the tournaments, that including our night 1 January 4th main event, right, with Okada and Ibushi. I forgot about that too.
Well, and I will say, speaking of Kevin Kelly, let's talk about. I mean, we had a chat on Twitter with Kevin Kelly over the weekend, because and this will lead us. We'll talk about Best of Super Juniors. One of the finalists, of course, Hiromu Takahashi, and on the prior night, he had compared Hiromu to Scott Norton, and we were kind of going deep and talking about who we'd compare Hiromu with, and chatting with Kevin Kelly about that. So what was your take, Fax, on that? Who's your guy that you compare Hiromu to as a heavyweight? The idea was he was comparing him to heavyweights.
Yeah. So I threw out there Brody King was who I had thrown out there because, again, I felt that the physicality of he uses his whole body, he kind of throws himself around the ring, and that was, I think, kind of what Kevin Kelly was going for. So that's who I went with.
Yeah, I just like that. Kevin Kelly was talking is like as we're getting deeper in the Twitter thing was like, if we're just doing all these comparisons, let's compare Show to Scott Steiner, young Scott Steiner, and I was like, that's amazing. I can definitely see Show walking to the ring with a tiger.
Yeah, I can 100% see that, and now I'm just looking for Show to just get so on the gas.
Just so deeply jacked.
So deeply jacked, do the bleach blonde hair, the chainmail wig thing, whatever you call that. I want to see Show do all of that now. But still Frankensteiners.
Of course. Well, and it's interesting because it's, we talk about, Yo as Jannetty. Yo as the Rick Steiner of the team also seems appropriate, potentially.
Well, we'll see once he's back, right? So if Show, despite this rocket push, is like, no, I'm not leaving Yo for another 10 years, then he's Scott Steiner. And by the way, I heard you crack a claw. I did want to clarify for some of the viewers here. This is not a White Claw, but I was thinking about, so one of the things we've been talking about is having our own little seasonal beverage for the holiday season that we're going to watch wrestling with. I had talked previously about Mountain Dew and whiskey as the combination, and we decided that was going to be called the Space Mountain in honor of Nature Boy Ric Flair.
Right.
And I was actually thinking about making myself a Space Mountain for tonight. And then shortly before we went on the air, I remembered, Mountain Dew has a ton of caffeine in it. Probably not a good thing for me to be drinking this late on a weeknight. But I did have decaf coffee. So it's whiskey and decaf coffee. I have some claws within arm's reach. So
I'm actually not drinking a claw tonight. I'm drinking the 3rd anniversary IPA from our dear friends at Fifth Hammer Brewery in Long Island City. Hammer, because where's the logo? There we go. Because of my love for Triple H, of course.
I was going to say your love of the Burning Hammer. One of your
that too.
Yeah. We've seen some good ones.
I was actually watching some indie wrestling last week, some old Jersey All Pro, and the Hit Squad did love dropping very thin 19-year-olds on their heads with burning hammers. It was pretty amazing. I loved all those early aughts, New York indie wrestlers who clearly just watched nothing but All Japan tapes.
Yep.
Homicides throwing lariats and screaming Kojima. But onto New Japan this week. So we have our finalists, Best of Super Juniors. It's Hiromu, and Hiromu had an interesting week because Hiromu had a match with Sho, which we were all very excited for. That I felt didn't totally hit my expectations.
It was good, right? It was really good, but it wasn't one of the best matches of the tournament.
No.
Which with those two is a big shock, right?
Right.
I mean, Hiromu's been wrestling. I mean, I haven't actually rated every match or anything, but his average has got to be just north of 4 stars or something like that. Like,
yeah, I think so.
And I would say that this was probably below average for a Hiromu match in this tournament.
Yeah, Hiromu then had the rest of the week getting certainly the best Taguchi match of the tournament.
And a lot of fun. The fun match.
Just a lot of fun. We found out what's under Taguchi's trunks, and it's a little disturbing.
Well, and it was kind of a big payoff, though, right? It was the big payoff for Taguchi's ass is out the whole tournament. Now, finally, his ass doesn't come out, and we find out, he's has some protective garb. I don't know how you'd put it.
A loincloth of sorts.
Well,
protective, sort of like a sumo loincloth, I think.
It was, very much so. But he didn't win the match, Taguchi.
Oh no.
So, but he was much more competitive with Hiromu than I think we thought we were going to be. And if he wants to attribute to the loincloth, maybe it's here to stay.
Yeah, and then Hiromu dragged whatever he could out of Master Wato.
Yeah, and Wato kind of grew on me a little bit as this tournament went on. Still not my cup of tea. Still not a guy I'm going to be looking forward to his matches overly much. But when he was wrestling like the good guys, kind of near the end of the tournament, they were solid, passable matches. He's not. I would no longer compare him to being the lightweight Great O'Karn, right? Who we'll talk about, I'm sure, when we get to the heavyweights.
Yeah, and interesting. And I thought, a really fun final night where 7 of the 10 matches had a chance to sort of affect the final results, which is pretty fun and a pretty good way to sort of good job on Gato of putting together a final night that was pretty fun there. So Hiromu beats Wato, and then interestingly, the other guy in the mix there was Sho with Ishimori, and I gotta admit, little disappointed not to see Sho make the final. No, they love Desperado. I'm sure it'll be a really good match, but.
And I wonder that if it's the junior single scene being so thin kind of hurts that I got a feeling that so again, I like the way they stacked this, by the way, in the last night, that Hiromu's match was kind of in the middle, maybe even or in the first half even.
Yeah, that was the end of it was the first half main event.
It was the first half main event.
The pre-COVID cleaning main event.
Right. Because I think it was also going to be the least suspenseful of those matches. That it's like Hiromu's going to be in the finals. We can play around that there's still technically math, but we all know Hiromu's going to be in the finals. Just let him win, let him beat Wato, and then let's take it from there. And I think that's where we kind of all penciled in. We inked in, let's be honest. We inked in Ishimori Hiromu at the Tokyo Dome before this tournament was announced.
Yeah.
And I think that Sho is kind of the clear next guy. They've already done Hiromu and Ishimori a couple of times. They're doing it again at the Tokyo Dome. You're going to need to build up a new challenger.
To be clear, I mean, I guess it could be Desperado, but it's going to be Hiromu. I mean,
it's technically within the laws of the physical universe for it to be Desperado, but it would be unlikely. And I think that they're kind of saving up Sho, especially if they're going to do Super Junior at the same time that they normally do it, meaning it's only about 6 months from now, not even. I think you could certainly have Sho win that Super Junior in 6 months, get the next big title shot at the big summer show.
No, and that's a good point, right? That could be the next. It could be. They feel he's 6 months away. He's not a year away. He's 6 months away, which I don't think is as unfair. And again, the idea that you're definitely going with a big Hiromu match at the Dome. And again, you don't put Sho in the position. In some ways, you protect him by having him not make the final because he doesn't have a big finals loss. He has a loss to Ishimori, which isn't a big deal. So I think that works. I don't think it harms him too badly. But I was excited. Again, I was just excited to see Sho go as far as possible. Whereas Desperado, he's my at best my second favorite junior member of Suzuki-gun. First, of course, being our beloved Doki.
Doki, of Suzuki-gun, as it's going to be known in the future. I'm right there with you. It's one of those weird. I also expected Sho to be in the finals against Hiromu. That way, you get the two big matches. You get Sho and Hiromu, and then you obviously still get Hiromu and Ishimori at the Dome. But what are you gonna do?
Yeah, but I gotta say, Doki really closing out strong. Really, just a strong tournament on the whole for him. He got a win over Bushi.
Yeah, he didn't have one bad match. He had two wins. He obviously beat Yumura, and then he beats Bushi, and he I think he went the whole tournament. He did not have one bad match.
Yeah. Sudoku Gun. When you're trying to find the right number to fill into your puzzle, the answer is always Doki.
Yes, agreed.
I saved that. I told Fax I had a joke, and I saved that, and I'm working on it. We're workshopping here.
Well, yeah, this is just the beginning of the age of Doki. We have a couple decades of Doki puns to make. I think
we're trying to get out in front here. We're like those guys. We want to see that band at the smallest level, so that not say we're not going to go see them when they're main eventing the Tokyo Dome, but we want to say we were there when.
And just like that band that you saw in the smaller venue, I was actively looking for Doki shirts this week. That's a thing that happened. I could not find any authentic ones in my size. I was able to find some kind of Doki indie shirts pre-owned on eBay, but they were like mediums.
Oh, that's not going to work. That's not going to work for any, especially Japanese mediums. I don't think are working for literally any adult American.
Yeah, Japanese medium is like a child's regular. It's like they have a T after it. The size would have a T after it in American sizes.
Maybe our first best there ever was shirt. Maybe I need to design a Doki shirt. Maybe that's what needs to happen in our lives.
Well, and maybe we can transition a little bit because my shirt, I want Doki and Hanare on my shirt because I think he's the other guy. I think it's, and not to the level of Doki, but
no one to the level of Doki.
Switching over, I mean, my two headlines from World Tag League, leading into the last night were one, FinJuice again keeps having fun matches.
Yeah,
and I would say overall, there was more really good, really solid, really good tag league matches than the previous weeks. I think this was the best week of actual consistent in-ring action, which I didn't expect because, the Techers had kind of fallen a little bit to the background and they'd carried, the first week completely. But, a lot of teams are having good matches and they're one of them. And then it's another week where Hanare is the star of his team, even though he's with the Ace. And, particularly going in with him and Shingo.
Yeah, great match they had against each other.
That was just a great singles match that they happened to have two other guys just kind of waiting outside. I really want to see. I don't think Hanare is going to get a match at the Tokyo Dome, to be clear. I'm not drunk yet. But after I have a couple more, I will petition for that. But, man, I got to think that they intentionally, until the last night, Tanahashi did not play in, win or lose in a single one of the finishes. Hanare was always the guy in their team in the ring for the end of the match, including the victories. And I kind of feel like this feels like, for the first time with Hanare, that this feels like they're actually building something. The crowd was getting behind him. They seem to say, hey, here's a stage. Show us what you got. We're going to have you you're going to be the big guy, the hard-hitting guy. We're going to put you with guys like Ishii. We're going to put you with guys like Shingo. And, he's kind of held his own.
Yeah, it feels like he's ready for a push to that sort of never division. Working, is particularly the way, obviously, he matched up with Shingo. The extended sequence he had with Ishii. Ishii's always great at, making it clear that someone's on the rise because of the way he interacts with them. Yeah. It's one of I think the incredible values of Ishii is that Ishii's, I was thinking about this the other day because Ishii's, he's getting on the older side. He's starting to work his way down the card, but he's so strong and such a great worker that he's clearly going to be one of their gatekeepers for a long, long time. And he's still at that level where he's playing the gatekeeper and by even beating Hanare, but sort of giving him something, made it clear, this Hanare's on the way up.
I don't think or know that they have this in Japan, but if this was the United States, we would be like Ishii. We'd already be talking about Ishii as like oh, he's going to be such a great agent for WWE or AEW after his in-ring days are over. Like he's going to be that coach / agent, occasionally on-air talent, in the United States.
Yeah, and it's weird because you so quickly forget because they haven't put him in big positions a lot, other than maybe like the Jay White match and the Okada match this year. But man, I was watching a match he had with Shibata in the 2013 G1 earlier this week, and fuck, man, those guys were great. Yeah, and I thought, and again, actually, I'll say this week, right, the match he and Yano had against Tekkers, I thought was my favorite tag match of the last night of World Tag League. I thought they had a really, really fun match together. It was as good as I was expecting. Lots of Yano silliness, but then also Ishii and Taichi had their sort of amazing. I just love the way that like Ishii brings out like the tough guy out of Taichi. It's always fun to me.
Yeah. I mean, it's not all just pants ripping with him,
No.
And he really does show that. And it is kind of interesting that Taichi is kind of de facto the big guy in there. It's like in Tag League in particular, there's always kind of a big guy and a littler guy. Like every single team is like that to some degree. And Zack Sabre, just because he's so skinny. I mean, he's obviously a tall guy. He's a big guy physically, but he's just so incredibly skinny that Taichi, with his dad bod, just kind of becomes the strong guy.
Yeah, Zack plays Ricky Morton
and he did a good job, though. He did a good job with it. Yeah.
No, I thought Taichi is the hot tag guy was surprisingly effective. Of course, though, Tekkers not making the finals, eliminated on points, and sort of losses with God and FinJuice making the final. And this, I gotta say, I had a lot of fun with this tournament. Kind of disappointed in that as the choice of final. Not that I was expecting Tekkers to win the tournament or anything like that, but I kind of felt like they were moving toward a 3 or 4-way final that would have made a more engaging final match. It just feels like FinJuice versus God is a match we've seen twice this year, and it's fine, but it's not exciting to me. I don't know. It's going to be a good match. It's not going to be a great match, I don't think.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and God certainly have not had the strongest of performances in World Tag League this year. But I don't know, it's kind of interesting to me still with the the whole they've never won one, and they are kind of the most dominant team of the generation, really. Like and they're one of the few like legit tag teams, which is kind of one of my things, Chris. You know that I really love the teams that are actually teams, and I don't know. It's a little interesting, but yeah, I still was kind of holding out hopes that if this was WWE or even AEW, any American promotion, the way they had set it up with the Tekkers saying they were going to take off Wrestle Kingdom if they won, I felt like that would have been perfect to have them win then. And of course, they're going to still wrestle at the Dome, but then you have so many flexibility. I know they don't do like authority carry, but you do some kind of something to get them to have a match. Maybe you can have a multi-man match. Because again, it doesn't seem like whether it's God or it's FinJuice, neither one of those feels like that big a match against the Tekkers that I feel like a multi-man could have actually been totally called for this year.
Well, and particularly again, even if they didn't want to do a multi-man match at the Dome, putting Tekkers in the final where they don't get pinned, right? They get very close to doing what they said they were going to, and it gets denied of them. Feels like it would have heated up the Wrestle Kingdom match pretty quickly, right? Tekkers like just missing, and FinJuice pinning God, where it's like, okay, now it feels like an issue. I don't know. I also really have to find another strong heel team. God can't be the only real heel team. Particularly,
I think Evil and Takahashi. I mean,
that
Takahashi. You know what I mean.
And I guess, look, you'd say Tekkers, but I don't know. I mean, it doesn't feel they haven't positioned them the same way.
That's why I would actually be kind of intrigued. I think it's going to be FinJuice that win this. I do, on one hand, and mostly hope it's FinJuice, because I think that FinJuice has been doing just that great classic Rock and Roll Express style, babyface act, and the Tekkers are just so good that I think that that's a really good match. and I think that's just a really solid, strong, belongs in the dome type of match. But God would be interesting, just in that we kind of would be like the Techers as baby faces in the Tokyo Dome already. Like, it would be kind of incredible that I'm not going to be that up, even though the match would probably be the drizzling shits. Although, I mean, the God can be carried, right? It's not like God is hopeless.
Yeah, I think it's a style problem, though. I mean, I think you see it in the match that they had, that Checkers and God had in the tournament. You know, I think the God is better in that brawling style. Like, I think their best matches are the matches they had with the Briscoes and ROH, the street fight, the ladder war. You know, that's where they really excel. And that's not the Techers. I mean, they had that match. They tried to have basically a God match, and it was fine. You know, wasn't great.
That's another thing for the GOD's eventual Hall of Fame, argument, is the fact that they were so successful in New Japan without being able to wrestle the types of matches that New Japan does well and that their fans like. It is kind of incredible, because I 100% agree with you that their best matches are all those brawlers types, and most of them are happening outside of New Japan or in kind of cross-promotional New Japan / Ring of Honor type shows. And, you know, it's just kind of incredible that they've been able to do that. And they're 75-time tag team champions or whatever they are.
Yeah, so we're looking ahead. So this week on Friday, we have the finals with an interesting undercard, bringing some of the guys back. Okada and Ospreay showing up on the card for the first time. Okada teaming with Hanare and Tana against the whole Empire. The first time the whole Empire has been together with Ospreay, Cobb, and O-Khan. And
hopefully O-Khan is not in that match very much, because, again, I said I wouldn't stress too much, but he is. I honestly, Chris, and I know he's only been in what about 10 matches now, 12 matches, whatever it is. I feel pretty confident saying I think he's the worst wrestler in the history of New Japan Pro Wrestling.
Wow, that covers a lot of ground. El Gigante wrestled in New Japan.
Okay, of a guy that was on the roster.
Okay.
Right? Not a guy that wrestled a single match or something like that. Of a guy that was on the roster, presumably is getting a paycheck every other week. Not a young lion, although I think a lot of the young lions are better than him. Just brutal. But anyway, I'm sorry.
Well, it's interesting. So I think the interesting thing about that match, in terms of, look, they've got to shoot a fair number of angles to fill out the Tokyo Dome card on this show coming up. Some of them, fairly obvious, right? Yano's in a 6-man match. We got to figure out who's going to challenge him for the KOPW title, things like that.
But I think
sorry.
Well, we did skip over too that we don't officially. I don't think it's officially announced, but we do know one more match for the Tokyo Dome in that Jeff Cobb pins Shingo and does the points to the belt thing. That was pretty clear. That was about as clear as you can get. That match will be happening. On January the 4th or January the 5th.
Yeah, Shingo.
Or both nights. It might be both nights.
Just filling out that card that way. But no, the big question, I think, because you look at the guys who are sort of promised to each other. I think Evil and Sonata is a fairly likely match. They're working against each other on Friday. The big people who are left out so far would be Hiroshi Tanahashi, who doesn't have anything on the horizon, and Kenta. And maybe Minoru Suzuki, depending on how they feel about him that day. Some days they feel like he's a top guy, and some days they don't. But with Tanahashi, it's a real question, because he's got to have a match.
He's the ace.
Poster.
He's on the poster. He's one of only 5. Will Ospreay's not on the poster, and his match was announced a month ago. So you're right. I mean, could he wrestle Ospreay and Ospreay pulls double duty? Possibly, but it doesn't seem like, outside of whoever wins the main event of the first night, seems like that's going to be the only person that pulls double duty. So Kenta is not on the card for the finals, but obviously he could be there or even do a video thing. So that's probably where I'd put my money. I hope it's not O-Khan. That would make me. I mean,
it'd be disaster.
I don't want Tanahashi to be my P-break match for Wrestle Kingdom. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And you'd think it's going to be something good. They do need to. It's 2 nights. It's not going to be as long as last year, right? You figure it's going to be probably about 3 hours each night.
Probably 6 matches a night.
6 matches. It doesn't look like, by the way, the other thing, just because we're in the junior tournament, it doesn't look like there's going to be a junior tag title match because, again, while we didn't think that the injury to Kanemaru was that bad, he's not on this card. And obviously part of that could be because Desperado is in the main event. And then maybe he could show up, and there's stuff that could still happen, but that doesn't seem like it's a match that's happening.
It could, they could pull it out. They could wait until the last minute and see how he's doing. They could always stick Doki in the other spot if they need to.
I mean, I'd love it. I actually think that would be an improvement. It's light. I mean, I don't.
Yeah, hold on. No dissing Kanemaru, but no, I think. Yeah. I mean, it feels like
the only guys out. Doki, you know that.
Yeah, it feels like, but bringing up those 3 guys, right? Because it feels like the only guys out there that work as a Tanahashi match, unless they have found a way to bring someone like Moxley in, would be Kenta and Suzuki. Those seem like the only guys at the right level for a proper Tanahashi match.
Or Show. I mean, again, Show might not have anything going on. That seems like it's. I don't know. It's a very interesting match that maybe they announced that at one of the Road 2 shows, just kind of like at the end of the thing, they just kind of announce it. It's not like an angle or anything. They're just like, ooh, there's going to be a good match. That could be fun. Otherwise, the thing is looking at who loses World Tag League, right? Because I think that if FinJuice lose, which I don't think is going to happen, but if they lose, again, Juice Robinson's a guy that's kind of at that level that him and Tanahashi in the Dome isn't a ridiculous concept, right? Juice is a fairly upper card guy. And then if FinJuice wins, then God, it seems like God was kind of starting something. They beat Tanahashi. It's the only
badly
finish,
last night. Yeah.
really badly, under 5 minutes. It's the only finish that Tanahashi's a part of, and he's tapping out. Could they be setting up something with God, or maybe it's just Tama Tonga? Maybe it's a handicap match. Maybe it's with Hanare. That doesn't seem as fun, but. Maybe it's somebody else. Maybe it's one of the old guys. Yeah, there's a lot of interesting things.
Yeah, and that's going to be a big one. And so 2 big shows this week, though, because there's that, and then the Super J Cup in the U.S. Not an interesting lineup, not because I think it's sort of the most stacked ever, but because of the wide range of promotions that are represented on the show, and explicitly so, right? They're talking about Chris Bay from Impact, Leo Rush from MLW, Ray Horace from ROH, making it very clear who those guys work for, and making that part of the push.
Yeah, you can go right now to njpw1972.com, and they have full bios up for all these guys saying where they worked in the past, where they're working now. For guys like TJP, they're like, yeah, he was in WWE. That's the thing that happened.
Yeah,
like ACH, same thing. And I also love this, Chris, that that I'm again a softie for anything that's like feels like the old days, even though I wasn't watching contemporary Japanese wrestling, watching it on tape years later usually, is the one-night tournament.
Yeah.
It's something that obviously it's gonna tire guys out.
A really cool jacket. I mean, how cool is that jacket?
Yeah. It's
gold jacket. Would you wear that gold jacket, Pax?
I would totally, not even a doubt. I would also say, if I'm, and I don't honestly, and I have no, and part of this because it's all these different promotions, I have no earthly idea who's winning.
Oh,
yeah, there's a couple of first round matches that you'd feel okay about picking, but like 2 of the first round matches you'd feel okay about picking. The other 2, I couldn't even pick the first round matches, let alone who's going to win it all. But all I say is this: whoever wins it all, I hope that they are professional enough and man enough to wear a different outfit each match.
Yes.
That is just the sign of a true future champion. And by the way, did we ever establish exactly what the winner gets? Is it just that do they get a title
jacket?
Match?
Probably, probably get a title match.
The title match whenever transcontinental travel is back to normal.
Yeah, just like the U.S. title briefcase tournament. They get a title match whenever the U.S. champion can fly to Japan.
And did this already happen? Is this taped?
I don't know, actually. I don't know what the deal is with that. Whether they've done this live to tape at some point.
Because that's another thing. Is could this have already happened, and the winner I'm just going to say it's Phantasmo. They're actually on their way back to Japan. They're already quarantining, and we're actually going to have not only heavyweight title matches both nights, but maybe junior title matches both nights.
That was possible and would be interesting, right? I mean, Phantasmo showing up for night 2 to wrestle Hiromu would be pretty amazing. I mean, Phantasmo to me would be one of the, somewhat like most likely winners, right? I mean, they're pretty hard. Him winning twice in a row would be kind of a big deal. Obviously, he also then makes sense as a finals loser, right? As someone who could go pretty far and lose to, let's say, Leo Rush or ACH or whoever they're trying to push next. But yeah, it's possible. We could see. It's going to be fun. It's going to be fun to have to have a fresh set of guys.
Yeah, well, and it's kind of interesting. It's certainly more interesting if somebody else wins, right? Because if he wins and he just gets a future title shot, and we already know he's working for New Japan, it's like, meh. Whereas if one of these other guys that we don't necessarily think is going to have a long-term relationship with New Japan, that he wins, that's more interesting. And by the way, just because they win, they might still not have a long-term relationship. I mean, you look at Japan back in the 90s and even into fairly recently, you'd see guys come in and do big high-profile title matches, but not really stick around. That's not without precedent.
Yeah, interesting. Now, it's interesting because I haven't seen a ton of Chris Bay. I've seen a little bit, but might see him when I'm watching Impact tomorrow because Kenny Omega, star of our last 2 watch-alongs, is giving a promo. Again, this is a New Japan discussion, but hard not to bring up, obviously, the fact that there was a pretty significant angle in the wrestling world this week that is getting people pretty excited. So as sort of a result, we'll talk a little bit about it as we do our watch-along. Our watch-along this week is of a match that became significantly more plausible to see again this week. We're going back to the Best of Super Junior tournament to 2014, and we are going to watch one of the last, other than maybe I think the year after they went in the tournament too, last singles matches of Nick Jackson. Him working against Alex Shelley of the Motor City Machine Guns, currently signed to Impact. Mm-hmm. We've put the link onto our in the chat, and you can pull that up on New World. I just searched Nick Jackson and kind of went deep. I'm sure if you search Jackson Shelley, would work. You'll find it pretty quickly. They obviously had matches as a tag team as well, but you'll get to the singles match pretty quickly.
Yeah, but before we hit play here, though, I think that's just the one interesting thing that didn't hit me until I watched BTE today, where who would have believed a couple months ago that you would have said there'd be a night that at the end of the night would be the first time ever that the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega have the big 3 titles. The Elite are the all-elite champions. And we all saw that was going to happen eventually. I think we all would be happy that this is happening. And then how surprised would you have been if you said, and immediately after that happens, the announcement is that Kenny Omega is going to give his first promo as champion on Impact Wrestling, and the Bucks don't seem happy about it.
Yeah. Very interesting turn of events. I'm certainly intrigued to see where it goes. Love Don Callis. Have enjoyed Impact on and off over the last few years. Not a super regular watcher, especially the last few months, when they've been in doing empty arena shows. But I think they do good stuff. I'm excited to see what they do with this.
And I think it's good timing too, because I think that getting the Good Brothers was kind of interesting, and was kind of interesting in a way other than I keep hearing that Impact is kind of good. It's nothing like the old TNA, and I believe that, but they were still kind of like lacking that catalyst. Then they had the Good Brothers, and like I've gotten really close to watching it just to see what they're up to. Now they're doing this. There's rumors of some, maybe it's not a long-term relationship, maybe it is, but there at least is going to be some matches. You got to think, you think that there's going to be at least a few matches, and I think that's enough to get me to check it out for sure.
Yeah.
I gotta know who Chris Bay's deal before I see him go against Sammy Guevara, right?
Exactly. All right, let's fire it up. If you haven't, go pull up that link. If you're watching us after this live stream, go pause us and go find it.
And again, just give the exact date. That's May 30th, 2014 in Corrigan Hall. It is the 7th match on the card. Alex Shelley versus Young Buck Nick Jackson.
And 3, 2, 1, play.
So we've got the wide view, but since this is in Japan, I think there will be multiple camera angles. Although again, not great. Oh, and Taichi, there you go. Taichi once was a Super Junior. He looked like there was a little bit of dad bod even back then, but obviously,
It was only recently. It was only when he went to heavyweight that he really dad botted out.
yes, because it's like you see like with Kenny Omega and Kota Ibushi and some of these other guys how they just really put on a lot of mass when they moved to the heavyweight division, and Taichi did too, just not in the gym. He put on the mass. Him and Kota Ibushi ate the same thing when they went to heavyweight. It's just Kota spent 7 hours a day in the gym after that, and Taichi played 9 holes of golf and then smoked a cigar.
I think Taichi drinks a lot more beer than Ibushi does.
That's true. That's true.
You can just sort of see like with the Techers that like Zach has a couple, and then Taichi's down in the rest of the 6-pack.
Right. He just wakes up and El Desperado's mask is just kind of around his thigh.
But people might not know, of course, a lot of people would know that Alex Shelley, part of the Motor City Machine Guns, great tag team, had some amazing matches with the Young Bucks in Impact in 2010. Really, when I was watching a lot of early Young Bucks, I mean, those matches are really exceptional, all of them. But at this point, Shelley was part of a team in New Japan called the Time Splitters with Kushida.
And that's where I knew Shelley from. When I started watching Motor City Machine Guns later on in Ring of Honor, it was one of those things that I had to wait. Like I probably seen them maybe at least 2 or 3 times until I go, oh wait, that's the guy that wrestles with Kushida.
Well, Shelley changes his hair a lot. It's hard sometimes. Yeah. You're like, is he a blonde? Is he long? What's going on there? But, yeah, and obviously a great tag team. Long career, sort of indie inventors. The Young Bucks have stolen a couple of their moves.
Oh yeah, Alex Shelley's like indie royalty. He's never going to need to pay for his own beer at a Starcast ever again. If there are Starcasts again.
If we ever get to go to one. Weird connection, interestingly. I did a couple of parenting podcasts called Shut Up and Dad. A friend of mine, Tim, from my old job, and his brother went to high school with Chris Sabin. Yeah, apparently nice guy. Always wanted to be a wrestler, they said.
That's great.
Yeah, living out his dream. It's always nice to see people live out their dream.
Oh yeah, and especially when they have really good matches doing it. So exactly. we get to see them live out their dream, and we enjoy watching them do it.
It's disappointing that Great O'Karn has lived out his dream.
Yeah, like if you heard that Great O'Karn's like a really great guy and like he coaches his kids with little league team and kind of does all this and this is always his dream, you'd still be happy for the family, but you yourself wouldn't feel like you're participating in it.
Yeah.
Interesting. I'm like, again, Nick obviously looks a lot younger. This isn't that long ago, but Nick is like 25 here, something like that, and just looks a lot younger. And I think it's also just with the hair. Obviously, he still has the long hair, but it's not nearly as long, and it's shaved on the sides. He doesn't fully he's clearly Nick Jackson. You're not gonna mistake him for like a younger Jackson, like Malachi or something like that. But he definitely hasn't really looked like current Nick Jackson physically.
Yeah, it's really 2017, 2018 where the Bucks, gained some mass to go up to heavyweight and really do kind of, that's when the Bucks start to look like what we think of as the Bucks now. But obviously they're still particularly Nick, on the skinny side at this point.
Yeah, but it's not just the skinny side.
Shelley with the cross chop,
yeah.
really telling people, really letting them know.
Well, because that's the thing is that Nick Jackson's not fully Bullet Clubbed out here. Like he came out in a non-Bullet Club vest, and I think that's part of it too. Is that Bullet Club swagger, while not an actual physical attribute, really I think created the iconic look and just feeling of the Young Bucks. That was it's here a little bit now, but it really, yeah, over the next two years or so is where it gets pronounced.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, they're about 6 months into their New Japan and Bullet Club run. And again, they're getting there. They're certainly throwing out the Suckets and the Two Sweets. But yeah, where they really become, again, as you said, fully young, sort of too sweeted out, we're still not quite there yet.
Right. Well, because again, I think they're kind of a little bit in the Bullet. They're in the Bullet Club, but that's just the way that everybody's in a faction, kind of, where they're not like central figures in the Bullet Club yet, and that's not going to really come until, I guess it's certainly before Kenny takes over leadership, but it's at some point during that year of Kenny is the junior champ, AJ is the leader. Kind of that's where the Young Bucks really become more prominent members of the group.
Yeah, that's where they start seconding Kenny in 2015, and then obviously the beginning of 2016 when they kick out AJ. That's the moment where they've kind of fully arrived.
Yeah, and again, that they don't fully arrive. The three of them, including Kenny, that doesn't totally work if they're not already well on their way.
Oh, of course, yeah.
But they were, and obviously, if you're watching this with us, you're probably aware of what's happened to them since.
Beautiful.
They've done okay for themselves. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Well, and I think it's also, I mean, I will say, if you haven't gone back and watched, the Young Bucks Time Splitters matches, do yourself a favor. I mean, they're pretty much all great. Big kick.
Yeah.
I think this is actually not long after the first pay-per-view match those two teams had. Just laughing at Nick, really just throwing that Too Sweet straight up to the camera. Which interestingly, it's a funny story because the Bucks talked about it in some shoot interview where they said they were amazed because they went way over time and they were worried everyone was going to yell at them when they got back, but everyone was just like, "Good match, you guys killed it." It was like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah, you could have went longer.
Yeah, New Japan's a different place. I get it now.
And it also brings up that I'm always fascinated with, because and I've been to Japan. I know you've been to Japan, and I've never really bothered to find out. I don't actually know what the TV deal is with that. Like, I know it's on TV. I know that obviously a TV company runs NewJapanWorld.com, but is there a weekly show? Do they just show part of the Korakuen shows? Is it different now that World is a thing than it was before? Because I always wonder about things like Overrun, because when you're just watching the random Road 2 shows at Korakuen, they don't end at a consistent, there's somewhat consistency in length, but certainly not to the point of an American show that has to be over by 11.
I think there are broadcasts on some stations. So maybe maybe it's a sports channel and they can just kind of treat it that way. If they're not on the main network, because I think there's like a TV show that's taped that's on the main network, or one of the main networks in Japan. But maybe the shows that are just on being broadcast end up on more of a sports schedule.
Because they made that big deal when I think it was the semifinal of the New Japan Cup was live on one of the main networks. And that was a big deal because that apparently never happened in primetime before, ever in the history of New Japan. But yeah, I mean, clearly that they're on TV. But again, if it's a big show like you're mentioning, it's a pay-per-view show. Obviously, then it definitely doesn't matter. But
yeah, and the great. I mean, these guys work together a whole bunch of times. Although obviously not a ton in singles, so it's interesting to see. I don't know, just see how fluid these guys are. It's just always interesting to watch one of the Young Bucks in singles because it's such a rare thing for them to see them work this way. Just always kind of a fascinating experience.
It's also interesting seeing the difference in the commercialization of New Japan Pro Wrestling. So we already mentioned that Nick Jackson, he threw the Too Sweet at the camera. Shelley gives the crotch chops. There's references to the Bullet Club stuff, sure, but he's again not fully Too Sweeted out. He's not wearing his own merch. He's not the merch fiend. And the thing that stands out to me too is I'm so used to it now for years. This is the Best of Super Junior. And yet our referees just wear normal referee attire. Normally for all the tournaments, they wear the tournament tour shirt and black pants. And I guess, I'm assuming they had a tour shirt. I think they've had those forever. So, but they didn't force the referees to wear them for every match back then.
And it's a good shirt. I like the shirt for this last tour. It's a nice one.
Oh yeah, I like a lot of them. Or maybe in an earlier match, Tai Chi had just ripped the shirt off the referee, and all they had was back up normal zebra shirts.
Man, and it's interesting again watching Shelley here at this point, about 15 years into his career, where I mean, even 5 years later, I mean, those guys still can go. Sabin and Shelley.
Oh yeah.
And obviously, look, they've had a million matches with the Bucks since then. They obviously had some great matches in ROH, but I do think there is something to the idea of this relationship allowing them to have, a big match against each other in front of a million viewers, and for the Young Bucks to sort of pay it forward of working with those guys at a time when those were the guys that kind of made them 10 years ago.
Well, not to mention, not only in front of 900,000 or a million viewers on TNT, but also just that entire locker room, right? I think half the guys in the locker room at this point, anyone pretty much younger than the Bucks, are all worship these teams, And then throw Gallows and Anderson in the mix, There's definitely because that's kind of an interesting synergy with Impact. And even though Kenny's kind of the big angle, they don't really have guys on Impact that can really stand with the guys at the top of the card on AEW. But AEW's obviously biggest, strongest point is the men's tag division. And that's probably also where Impact has, I think, the most interesting guys that you'd put at that top best tag teams in the world level.
Right. I mean, Ethan Page and Josh Alexander are great. The other obvious place in terms of synergy where Impact is super deep that AEW is, has not so much would be the women, right? I mean,
we already see this with NWA, right? The NWA doesn't have a super big, deep women's division, but the fact that they have two women that are pretty good kind of doubled the size of women in AEW that are pretty good,
right?
Consistently.
And also interestingly, people with relationships, right? I mean, Rosemary and Allie have had a long sort of like working relationship. Deonna Purrazzo was supposed to work the first All In.
Oh yeah.
Taya Valkyrie has done BTE. So people who have sort of are in the orbit and I think would make sense and would be really good adds to the division.
Yeah, I totally agree. Because again, the women's division, we've talked about it before. They struggle to even find matches to put on the pay-per-views, even though they're only doing a pay-per-view every third month.
Yeah, love the big DDT out there. Just to point out that a nice variation on some of one of Nick's sort of common moves there.
Young boy showing again for the second week in a row.
Oh,
yeah, that was. Oh, I thought that was the finish right there. I might personally just keep watching some of these Matt and Nick Jackson singles in the Super Juniors just to see what they're, because I looked at some of the standings. They finished pretty well. They definitely won some matches each. I don't know what their finish as a singles is. I would assume just the super kick.
Yeah, I don't know. Got to tell you, not a lot of them because they were putting a lot of Best of Super Juniors on World. Oh, and that does it. The mousetrap.
And then I got and there we go. There's some.
Oh,
that's the type of attitude that's going to get you further in the Bullet Club.
Just beating the crap out of guys.
That also shows another difference with New Japan. That the Bucks here, they're junior heavyweight tag champs, and they get over and they're one of the biggest acts in New Japan. It's not like we have this fond recollection just because of what they've become since. Like they were legit as in the junior division, one of the biggest draws in New Japan. And just if you think about that, and like in American wrestling, whenever there's been lightweight divisions, you can't really think of anyone that in a lightweight tag team division would ever become kind of a face of the company type.
Yeah,
there's no precedent for that ever happening in the United States. And
pop for Kushida too, I got to say. As we close that one out, I wonder if it flowed straight in because I know the other option that we were discussing was Matt versus Kushida. I think may have been from the same show, but great run in there from Kushida.
Very interesting. Yeah.
All
Alrighty.
right.
Well, so yeah, we're going to be back next week, right? Are we going to be back? We'll talk about.
I think we're going to be back. We're going to talk about the big two shows this week: the Best of Super Junior World Tag League Finals and the Super J Cup, and preview what's to come down the road. Hopefully, we'll have a little better sense of what it looks like in Wrestle Kingdom.
Yeah, and even if it's not formally announced, hopefully we should know most of the card, I would think, of Wrestle Kingdom by next week. And again, we'll be back Tuesday. Presumably, this was just a one-off special for Monday to benefit the Fax Vacation Fund, which is just fund of sleeping more since, there's a pandemic. Yeah. Not going to Disney World. Yeah, and we'll maybe we'll watch a classic Super J Cup match after we watch this one this weekend. Maybe that'll get us in the mood. You don't need to bend my arm for that one. There might be a certain year I'm thinking of. Ooh. All right. Hope you've enjoyed this. As I said, we'll be back next week. I've been Chris. I've been Fax, and I've enjoyed this. We're the Curtain Jerks. Adios.